Hello, everyone. Welcome. Maryssa Mitsch here from the Early Childhood Special Education Program in the Department of Special Education at San Francisco State. And I am here with Crystal Hawkins. Welcome, Crystal.
Thank you for having me.
So excited for you to be here and kind of have a conversation about all the wonderful work that you are doing in San Francisco in the Bay Area. So really just appreciate you taking the time to sit here with me and sort of share your perspective and experiences with students in our program and classes. So just thank you. Kind of want to first off say that. So thank you very much.
It's an honor. Thank you. And hello.
Yes. Hello to everyone.
Yes,
Great.
hello to everyone.
Yeah. I can imagine students are listening to this like on the bus or public transit, maybe driving their car or watching it from the comfort of their home. But really excited just to hear you share a bit about you and your work that you're doing. So why don't we just kind of start off with that? Can you share a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm not sure, but probably majority of your students are Giants fans, and they can see that I am not. I am born and raised South Central LA, very much love the Dodgers, go blue. As she said, my name is Crystal Hawkins. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I do a couple things. I have my own private practice where I see specifically African American clients for therapy. And then in the school district, I'm a program administrator. I developed a program called the Shoestrings Children's Center. Our program serves pre-K or preschool, TK, and kindergarten students. And our program was designed in response to significant disproportionality, which is an overrepresentation of a race or gender in a specific category. In San Francisco, those categories are African American students being over-referred to special education for emotional disturbances at a higher rate than their peers, and also suspended and expelled at a higher rate than their peers. So our program was designed to combat that or interrupt that at an earlier part of the student's journey so that they can have a successful academic journey here in the school district.
Awesome. That's a great introduction, sharing a bit about your history and sort of, the key element of your different work and things that you're doing. So thanks for giving that great overview. So let's kind of like just dig right into it. And you had mentioned, part of the Shoestrings Children's Program is to disrupt the trajectory of some of these kids and the referrals, suspension, expulsion, and the overrepresentation. So can you speak more to that?
Sure, absolutely. African American students in the school district, San Francisco Unified, is pre-K through 12th grade. So in the entire school district, African American students make up 10% of the population. African American students, 10% of the whole population, and they make up, I'll use more recent data because it sounds better. African American students are 6%, because I was going to give you data before we went to the pandemic, but currently African American students make up 6% of all students pre-K to 12th grade, right? African American students make up 13% of students referred or in receiving special education services. African American students make up 21% of those students receiving special education services that have the ED, emotional disturbance designation. So it's a very small percentage of students African American students in the school district as a whole. However, they're being over-referred, they're overrepresented in the special education system or services or supports, and especially for emotional disturbances. So what's happening that we can have a very small percentage of Black children in the school district, and that they're referred at higher consistent rates for special education or emotional disturbances. So what are we doing as a system? That speaks to the work I'm doing in Shoestrings. But let's start with our youngest learners, our preschool babies, or TK and kinder. It's because by second grade, we're seeing a spike in OHI, other health impairments. So our babies are going to be suspended and expelled, and then also receive an ED or an OHI designation. So what are we saying about the children that we have such a small percentage of in the district, but that consistently, this is the narrative that goes along with serving those children? How are we providing supports to address the needs? Because it's saying that we're suspending them with these designations, they're being suspended. So this data gives us an opportunity to look at systems work, because unfortunately and historically, we have underserved Black children in the school district.
Yeah, and this work is so important, and the data speaks for itself, right? In terms of year to year, or however you break it down, you're able to see, are the systems working? Are they improving? Are they not? And that's where like collecting information and data is really powerful, to be able to do that and figure out, okay, what do we need to do and how do we change it? So yeah, that kind of makes me think a little bit more of learning and sharing with the students about Shoestrings and sort of what that work looks like with kids and families.
Yes, Shoestrings, my baby. Just a little bit about me. Before we were going to start Shoestrings, I started with the district in 2014, I think September. By December of 2014, I was ready to quit. I said, it was hard to come to work and do a disservice to children, all children, but specifically the kids that looked like me. And then there were conversations about like, nope, we're seeing the data. We have a model in San Bernardino County we can go look at. It's called the Desert Mountain Children's Center. They have this really cohort model where they provide intensive services. So Shoestrings was modeled after the Desert Mountain Children's Center, their care model, which is comprehensive assessment research. I can't think of the E right now.
Evaluation?
Come on now. I know
Okay.
that's right. Evaluation.
Okay.
You like it's research, Crystal.
No, I was like just thinking of an E word, like evaluation,
Yeah,
equity.
that's exactly what it is.
Yes.
And so for us, our program is diagnostic placement. When I say diagnostic placement for pre-K, TK, and kinder students, when children leave Shoestrings, you will not have a mental health diagnostic in the sense that we do intentional work with the child when they're here at Shoestrings. We do intentional work with the families, and we do intentional work with the school site. So like tying all the pieces together, because it's easy just to blame the child and not see that environment that the child's in, or like support strategies that are being implemented or not implemented with supporting them. So we're a social and emotional sensory integration program. We use 10-week cohorts, so we'll have 4 cohorts per year, fall, winter, spring, and summer. And during those cohorts, the children are with us here at Shoestrings 3 days a week, 3 hours a day. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, from 9:30 to 12:30, they're here. And on Thursday and Friday, they're back and they're in their classrooms at all times, but they're here. But my team will go to their classroom to model strategies we've learned that works for them, support teachers and site staff with implementing the strategies, and then they take data for areas continuing to need support. So when the child comes back on Monday, we can support them. Now, children come from across the district for our 3-hour program 3 times a week. And while they're here, after the program, they go right back to their classroom and they're able to like put all the cool things they learn into practice. So we call that generalizing practice, right? When the kids are here, they have access to OT, getting their sensory needs met, group interaction, play therapy. We're not an educational placement. However, when we know kids are together, learning happens. So we use discrete trial training to break down larger concepts and to teach until mastery. We have something called workstations where kids are able to work independently on educational concepts or fine motor skills that they've mastered to like reinforce confidence. But we're constantly taking data on that to share with the family and the school site. And for us, it's not necessarily that when the children leave here, they know all the letters in their name, but we're able to share this information with the family and the school site. Like they may need brain breaks, what type of sensory input they need, what type of activities need to take place before writing your name. Like to go outside and have had so much fun and then come in and do writer's workshop could be really hard. What type of sensory input does a child need? Which is important for adults. I said I can't fly when I fly, I have to wear like a maxi dress or leggings, because if I wear jeans, my body's going to be like, I'm sure you have restless leg syndrome or something. But how are we ensuring that the child's individual needs, social, emotional, sensory are met, so they can focus on the academic, so we can remove those barriers so they can access the learning and that's taking place in their classroom. So it's really comprehensive work that we're doing here. We have family workshops, teacher consultations. We end with a graduation celebration. When children leave, they have a detailed transition plan, not a 504, not an IEP. It's not a legal document. It's like, hey, after 10 weeks of working with this child intensely, utilizing intervention and assessment simultaneously, these are some social and emotional goals and strategies we've learned to support them with meeting goals or areas needing more support. So it's just a plan, you know. We support families in being and advocating for themselves, like implement these strategies for my baby. It's what works, but really utilizing it as partnership to reinforce and strengthen what's happening in the classroom for the child.
Yeah. It, like you said, it really is so comprehensive. I
Mhm.
love how at the end you kind of celebrate kids. So are there some kids who need more time, or you find they're successful much quicker so they're able to exit sooner, or how does that
So
work?
all children, regardless of the progression, they get the full 10 weeks. What we realize in that, and the team, we speak of it all the time, how environment plays a role. I'm not sure, you know, some teachers may not realize how to utilize the environment as another teacher in the classroom. Is it accessible? You know, can the child navigate it on their own? Are materials out? So they can learn, have some of that agency over the classroom or feel part of the classroom community, which I'm very proud of my team. They do a really great job making sure the environment is predictable. We have routines and visual schedules, and it's nurturing. Do you need to take a break in a calming corner? There's snacks out. Do you need a snack? Neutral colors, so it's not over stimulating or overwhelming for children. It's predictable, it's nurturing, and it's safe. I know that there's at least one adult I can get my needs met from. I know I'm given the tools to build my emotional vocabulary, to express my thoughts and feelings, and share, give context as to why I'm feeling those things. So all those elements need to be in place for a child to thrive within their classroom, within any environment. I want it to be predictable and safe. So really focusing on those strategies, we have seen children, because we are deemed a tier 3, if you're familiar with the pyramid or response to intervention, tier 1, tier 2, we're tier 3. We've had children, we're in our 16th cohort. We've been having cohorts for the last 4.5 years. We have seen children that have never exhibited the behaviors that was on their referral form. So that
Wow.
really speaks to relationship and environment. So much so that my team, we a couple years back, we threw out saying attention seeking versus seeking connection. Like, what connection is this child trying to make with
Yeah,
the
I love
adults,
that.
the peers in their environments? Because attention seeking, that's really like adult language, right?
It is.
Like, it's manipulative. It's like we're all at the party, like, oh, they're gonna try to get all the attention. They think they're
Yeah.
super cool. Where
Yeah.
kids, it's like, I'm trying to get a need met.
Mhm.
Literally, I'm just trying to get a need met. And if I'm a child, really, going from magnet-tiles to having to write is probably not a preferred activity. So I'm going to continue to play magnet-tiles, not being manipulative. I'm being a 4 or 5-year-old kid. This is what I want to do. So we've seen children that haven't displayed the behaviors that was on their referral form. We have seen children start to shift in their behavior. We're not like Benadryl. We're not a magic pill. So it's not like you get shoestrings and you're done, because tier 1 and tier 2 work needs to happen before a child comes to shoestrings, while they're in shoestrings, and then when they
Mhm.
transition back. It's
Yeah.
ongoing. The work doesn't stop while we're part of that baby's village. So we've seen behaviors shift early on. We've seen them shift towards the end of a cohort. You know, no two children are the same. Because we're a short and intensive program and we only have 4 cohorts a year, ideally, we won't have children repeat. We've had 2 instances of children repeat. One, a child shortly after graduating from Shoestrings was removed from their home by Child Protective Services. They stayed in the school district. So we did another cycle of Shoestrings because now they were adjusting in a new home environment. They knew Shoestrings was consistent. So there was another layer of support that could be provided on some new needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that, and then one time there was domestic violence in the home and the family moved out of state. And then came back a couple of months later. So that child was able to get back in Shoestrings. But ideally, gradual release is day one for us because we want to build capacity of the sites and build partnerships with the family so that they can start shifting practice, but also making your environment nurturing where the kids can access what they need when they need it.
Yeah. And it seems like all the work that you're doing in collaboration with families, in collaboration with the classroom and those like adults in that classroom is also strengthening their strategies and skills to be able to provide, you know, like more specific interventions and strategies for other kids in their room too. So they're also, you know, while they're changing what they're doing in tier 1 and tier 2 in their classrooms, that's benefiting all the kids in the room. And then they're able to, provide more support for anyone else in the room who maybe doesn't qualify for Shoestrings, but needs a little bit extra support.
You hit the nail on the head because, a child but you can implement a visual schedule for all your children. You can implement these strategies for children as they need it. So that is the beauty. And sometimes, you have your vet teachers that have been like, I've been doing it like this since forever, beginning of my career. And we're like, we can tell.
Yeah.
And then you have some teachers that are really open and wanting to learn. They want to connect and want their child, their student to do well. And not even do well by like benchmarks, but like just like thrive in a healthy way for themselves. So we have very few struggles with teachers. And sometimes I don't want to say that is sometimes those veteran teachers, you're like, okay, you don't want to work at Macy's? No? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You'll keep teaching. All right.
Yeah. And that's hard because you got to like learn how to work with adults too.
And that's where the
even
beauty
more
of
challenging.
The partnership with the principals at the school sites come in, right? Like there's a level of accountability because you were all in ready to talk when it was to describe this child's harder moments, right? When you were looking to just blame the child, all in. When we're saying like, oh, there can be some shift in your practice, in your classroom environment, in your approach, then it's like, how dare you? So there has been some of that too. Well, I tell people all the time, I am not in the business of changing children so adults can feel safe or comfortable. I don't do that. Not safe, but like comfortable.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's like, sounds like some really tough conversations. And I imagine, I don't know if it really gets easier, but you have more experience or practice with tough conversations. So
I think I have a thing about me in the district. People kind of know when I show up, like how a meeting's gonna go, or what I'll say, or
yeah. That's good. That is good.
I'll take on being the Suge Knight of early childhood education. I'll be Suge Knight.
That sounds good. I love that. I love that. Yeah. So on like a different note, like you had mentioned earlier, some kind of traumatic experiences or adverse childhood experiences. We talk a little bit about in our class related to like domestic violence or related to, switching homes and child protective services. So, I don't know, can you like talk a little bit about that? Like, are you seeing a lot of the kids coming in with a lot of trauma at home, or I don't know, it's like, it's such a hard balance. So I
want to talk about the home.
Yeah.
I also know as educators, sometimes it's easy for us to default to the home, where as a system, keep it in mind that the education system was not designed with Black children in mind, brown children in mind, children of color in mind, for that. So as a system, we have some changes we can make. And oftentimes children experience trauma in school settings too. Like, a child may know how to say like, oh, that's explicitly racist or biased, but they know what it's like when they made to feel different. And as far as homes, it waves. I mean, families are people and they have sometimes housing needs, employment needs, similar to us as educators. We show up and we love it and we have stressors happening to us too. With domestic violence, we do provide support for the family and the child. Definitely giving the child the space to express just feelings that they're having, because often witnessing domestic violence, we can see some of the behaviors or some of the more bigger emotions, as we call them, but also when a kid all of a sudden is like isolating, we're like, hey, we pay attention to that too. So just really imagine being 3.5, 4, 5, 6, trying to understand what is happening outside of your control. Now, what I can control is throwing this block, or we've had some kids, I'm upset, but what I can control, I'm gonna take my clothes off. So being that young, having difficulty understanding what's happening around you. So it hasn't been like just so many cohorts, but I think it's families. I'm sure the pandemic caused another layer of stress. So as the society or our communities experience stress, our babies do, and then they come to school every day, so it shows up in the classroom. So how are we using trauma-informed practice? Like, how are we being kind? Like, if you've never officially been trained or had access to trauma-informed practices, like, or strategies, like, how are you just loving on a baby? I often ask people, like, yeah, those letters behind your name are cool and all that. Do you like kids? Because if you like kids, you are going to want to connect in a way that shows that. Yeah. So yeah, we've had, the stressors that all of us, or individuals or humans experience. We've had our babies, come to school and show us that they're having a hard time understanding what's happening around them.
Definitely. And it is hard to, teach and to support kids in order to have them be able to communicate, because oftentimes they don't have those words yet. And so they're using their behaviors as a way to communicate what's sort of happening. And you mentioned like a lot of buzzwords, I should say, and things that we are talking about in this class. So I think hopefully students are kind of connecting and noticing like trauma-informed practices or trauma-informed care, right? And talking about trauma and some other things within the class. So thanks. Yeah, so for people who are in their own classroom, whether they're like a paraprofessional or they're early childhood ed, they might be in like childcare, early childhood special ed. Are there any kind of like key strategies or things that immediately come to mind for you that would be helpful for them to support the social emotional learning for kids in their room?
So my team every day, when their kids leave, we meet for about an hour, and our check-ins are big on self-reflection, and that self-reflection piece, that our race and power dynamics are always at play. We have this thing that, well, some days I'm cute when my hair is done, and some days I'm like this with tennis shoes or Jordans or things on. And we've had quite a few visitors. We've had governor's office come, CDE, different school districts. And if you don't necessarily know Crystal Hawkins, who you're coming to meet, if you walk in a classroom and I'm playing on the floor with Magnetiles, you may not think that, oh, this little Black woman oversees this program, right? You may go to my white occupational therapist or my tall Black male staff, right? So we talk about how that plays out for us as adults. So think about the children we serve. We designed our program to support the children that have the most intense needs. So one, we don't get to hold a grudge. Yes, that probably did hurt when you got kicked in your knee. Yep, and make sure you're loving on that baby. If you need to take a step out and take a break, but we don't get to hold grudges here. So really intentional practices before we get into doing any work, like how are we showing up for ourselves? How are we in tune with our needs? Right? I'm a therapist. You're triggered by something, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. You think something, you feel something, you do something. So if you're triggered by something that's happening to you in the workplace, you're thinking something, feeling something, you're going to respond in a way, or maybe react in a way. So how are we intentional about checking in with ourselves, creating an environment for my team members to check in and like, hey, I didn't feel comfortable when this happened, or I'm wondering if this is coming up for me with the child, or say if any of my team members had experienced DV in their homes growing up or in their intimate partner relationships, that knowing that that's happening for a child, that can trigger something for you. Right? So being mindful, perspectives of people, we have served majority Black boys in our program. For some reason, that is who we as a whole see as having challenging behavior, little Black boys. So as my Black male behavior interventionist, what comes up? That can come up something for me. It's like, damn, y'all think every Black boy is quote unquote bad? So more before you get to any like approach or practice, really being able to check in with yourself, like what's coming up. For me, I remember I didn't care who it was. I used to tell people all the time, you can't be in a meeting with me and call no little Black boy, no Black girl aggressive, violent. Oh, they were like this violent. I was like, behavior is something you can describe. Describe that for me. So just like knowing what comes up for me. So knowing what that for them so that they can do that. But also like, how am I showing up in the work where I'm making the environment and this it's educational experience for this child welcoming, predictable, and nurturing? Because we offer some of the best professional development. We can do all the trauma-informed training. We use Komochis for our social emotional training, our curriculum. We have sensory integration. We have all these things. And again, our program was designed in response to how our district has underserved, particularly Black children historically. So we have the training. It's a mind shift and a system shift we need to make. So we have all the trainings and those are cool, but really getting people to tune into how they're showing up and what they're feeling, that's where shifts will take place.
Yeah. And thanks for really sharing that. I feel like in the field, there has definitely been like a dynamic shift of a lot more like reflective practice and checking in with yourself, that has really been more prevalent in conversations the last like few years. And I think it's going to only continue to grow. And I know, like in the, field of social work and in, mental health and even early intervention, that has been kind of prevalent for quite some time, but more specific to like early childhood special ed, I feel like that's kind of just catching the attention of a lot of people and programs. And so trying to build that in more to coursework, but also into like the practice of what you're actually doing in schools. And so that's an important thing to keep in mind, after a class or after a program of like, what am I doing on a daily basis? And maybe even like multiple times a day, checking in with yourself, especially in those tough scenarios or situations when you're having those big emotions, and, interacting with kids. Because you
I'm
need to
also
lead with love.
thinking,
Mhm.
I'm thinking about what would you, and I may cut you off, apologies. The way my brain works, I have to get it
Oh,
out
no, you're
raw.
fine. Yeah. No, I said lead
Um,
with love. That's all. That's all. Yeah.
yes, that you have, we don't care about all those letters behind your name. They're great and all, but do you like children? So I think about too, and for your students like that have worked or focusing on working in the special education setting or just serving or supporting special students in special education services. And what comes to mind for me is that often we've worked with families that have said, no, stay away, even if their child may need services or undersped, no. I remember how I was treated in special education. So for that, they are intentional about avoiding it. So thinking for any of your students that are now wanting to teach in special education department, or teach children with different needs, it's like, wait, what's coming up for me? If I received services through special education, how was my experience? So really just being mindful of the fields that we're drawn to, or the jobs we're drawn to. Like, please don't ever get in this work to any field to be a savior.
No.
Just do your work in partnership with. So thinking through that.
Yeah. No, that's really important. I think understanding a little bit more of how people identify and sort of their positionality and like the privilege that they hold is really important in this work and going into different communities, working with lots of adults, families, kids, right? So I think that's really important to also mention and something we're talking about a bit in this class, but it's kind of a never ending ongoing work that people need to do. So I guess I'm thinking a bit about, you had mentioned sort of San Francisco Unified, where you are. Are other school districts nearby being like, hey, they're doing some cool things over there. We want to imitate or, copy what they're doing. Are you working with other districts or just kind of curiosity? Or are you trying to grow within San Francisco Unified? I
So
imagine there's a need sort of everywhere, but
right now within San Francisco Unified, we have expanded a hybrid model. And the hybrid model is to 2 school sites in the district, 1 early education standalone site, and then one, hold one second. Yeah.
real life,
Yeah,
real
real
life.
life, right? Um, so we've expanded to 2 sites. We have a hybrid site where it's still 10-week model, but instead of coming to Shoestrings, they're at the school site.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're at the school site, but no, we've had multiple school districts come visit and are thinking about how can they build out a shoestrings or components of the program. I think every school district across the country should have access to this program because it's working. We served in the last 16 cohorts, 4.5 years. We've served close to 80 children. Of the 80 children, less than 7% of the children we've served have been referred to special education for emotional disturbances, and less than 3% have been suspended. So again,
Wow.
80 children, it may be a small sample, but the numbers and the data speaks volume to us and the work we're doing.
Mm-hmm. The data, they don't lie. So that's what you need to rely on. That's really important. I think I might have a school district or two to refer to you
Okay.
to look more into, so we can talk about that offline
Okay.
a bit. Yeah, so I guess we're kind of coming towards the end of the conversation. So is there anything else that you can think of that you wanted to talk about today or share with students, people who are in the field or might be going into the field?
I would just say, as a person that does not have children, who would love to be a mother one day, I approach this work as, regardless of my baby, like being the child that comes in, don't make a peep, right? They do everything they need to do, or if my child gets their needs in a different way, where they let you know I am here. I often think about how can I approach this work as an educator or show up in a way that the way I would want someone to show up if I had a child, regardless of the way they got their needs met. Because quiet kids, I love to like, what's going on with you too? Can we support you with interacting with your peers in the environment? So if I have any advice, just show up the way that if you are a parent, you would want somebody to love on your baby, or teach or engage with your baby. If you're not a parent, you don't want to be a sibling, a family member, like how would you want someone to show up for your child and be that? Or the student, be the teacher or educator you needed when you were a student.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think that's something we can all sit and reflect on, sort of, who has been there for us. And I don't know, it makes me even think about like reaching out to some old teachers maybe who are influential
Mhm.
and kind of writing some sort of like statement of purpose for being in the field, and something you kind of read to yourself every single day and you recite as a way to kind of get ready to go into the room and lead with love with kids and families.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I'm Facebook friends with a couple of teachers now. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's beautiful.
I love that. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Crystal. Really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us in real life, to share about your experiences and perspective, and how we just need to continue to do the work. And there's a lot of work that we need to do in order to make some system changes. So yeah, I really appreciate it. Is there like a website or anything where students can go if they want to learn more about your program, or is there?
Shoestrings, of course, on the district's website, sfusd.edu. You can look under the early education department, and Shoestrings is under there.
Okay, great. I will try to link that for our students. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you.